Like the way you're looking around. You seem nervous. What are you doing here?
I'm waiting for my boarding group to be called.
Yeah? You've been scanning the terminal like you're watching
It's
someone.
an airport. People look around.
Stand up. You're being detained for suspicious behavior.
Sure you want to do that?
Stand up. Turn around.
The federal badge emerged from the inside pocket of a Navy sweater at 2:32 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, Terminal B, gates 10 through 16. Officer Brian Tasker, badge number 7741, 9 months on the Chicago Aviation Security Force, had been standing over a black man seated in the gate area for 3.5 minutes. The man had headphones on, a carry-on bag at his feet, a watch on his wrist, and a wedding ring on his left hand. He was doing nothing. That was the problem, apparently. A black man doing nothing in an airport terminal, sitting too still, minding too completely his own business in a seat he had every right to occupy. "Sir, I'm going to need you to come with me." The man pulled one headphone off, turned slowly, looked at Tasker the way a man looks at something he has seen before and was hoping this time not to see again. "Do you know me?" The question landed with the particular weight of someone who already knew the answer and was giving the officer one final opportunity to change course before the situation became irreversible. Tasker did not know him. That was about to be the most expensive thing Officer Brian Tasker had ever not known. The man reached into the inside pocket of his sweater, slowly, with the practiced deliberateness of someone who understood exactly what an officer might assume and was not going to give him the excuse. What came out was not a wallet. It was a credential case, black leather, federal seal, the badge of a special agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Marcus Cole, FBI, Chicago Field Office, 12 years in federal law enforcement, and you are going to want to think very carefully about what you say next. The Bodycam captured Tasker's face in the silence that followed, captured his posture shifting, his weight redistributing, the biological reality of a man whose understanding of the situation had just been completely revised. Captured the moment a 9-month career in aviation security began its final countdown in a gate area at O'Hare International Airport. Tasker was terminated, referred for civil rights review. The incident, time-stamped Axon Bodycam 2025-01-14T143201Z, went viral within 24 hours, 61 million views across platforms. Marcus Cole filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. The city settled for $6 million. The footage became mandatory training material at aviation security agencies in 14 states, and 4 words, "Do you know me?" became the most quietly devastating question in airport security history. Before we go on, please subscribe to the channel. These stories matter. Tuesday afternoon at O'Hare, Gate B14, the 3:20 p.m. departure to Washington Dulles. Marcus Cole had been in Chicago for 4 days on federal assignment, the kind of work that doesn't get discussed at dinner tables, the kind that requires showing up in cities that aren't yours and leaving before anyone learns your name. 12 years with the Bureau, 2 commendations, a caseload that had taken him through organized crime divisions, counter-terrorism task forces, and the particular patience required to build federal cases that hold up in court. He was good at his job. He was also, on a Tuesday afternoon in January, just a man waiting for a flight home. He wore a navy sweater, jeans, a watch his wife had given him for their 10th anniversary. His carry-on was regulation size, stowed at his feet. His headphones were on, because the gate area was loud and his flight wasn't boarding for 40 minutes, and he had earned, through 12 years of service to the federal government, the right to sit in a plastic airport chair and listen to whatever he wanted. His federal credentials were in the inside pocket of his sweater, where they always were. His service weapon was checked and locked in his carry-on, documented with the airline per federal protocol, as it always was. He did not notice Officer Tasker watching him from across the gate area. Officer Brian Tasker had been assigned to the B concourse for 7 of his 9 months on the force. His supervisor, Sergeant Linda Price, had filed 2 prior concerns in his personnel record. Officer Tasker demonstrates inconsistent judgment in citizen contacts, observed pattern of disproportionate scrutiny toward minority travelers. The notes had been filed, no corrective action had been taken, no additional training had been assigned. Tasker had continued his patrols with the documented concerns sitting in a folder that no one had followed up on. His body cam was active as required. He had activated it before approaching, which meant that everything that followed, every word, every posture, every assumption, was preserved in full by the department's own equipment. He crossed the gate area at 2:28 p.m. The footage shows him scanning the rows of seated travelers. It shows him passing a dozen other passengers without pause. It shows him stopping in front of the one black man sitting alone with headphones on. It does not show a dispatch. It does not show a supervisor's instruction. It does not show a reported complaint or a flagged behavior or any basis the footage could later document. It shows a security officer deciding, on no articulable ground, that one particular traveler needed to be looked at more closely. He stood over Cole for nearly a minute before speaking. The body cam recorded the wait. "Sir, sir." He tapped Cole's armrest. "I need your attention." Cole removed one headphone. The camera captured his expression, not alarm, not aggression, recognition. The tired, calibrated recognition of a man processing a situation he had a protocol for. "Is there a problem?" "I need to see your boarding pass and some identification." Cole studied him, the posture, the position, the complete absence of any stated reason. "Why?" "We've had a report of a suspicious individual in this gate area. I need to verify your travel documents." Cole's eyes moved once around the gate area, the dozens of other travelers, the rolling luggage, the ordinary midday motion of a working airport. His eyes returned to Tasker. "What was the description?" Tasker shifted his weight. "Sir, I just need—" "What was the description of the suspicious individual?" The silence lasted 4 seconds, long enough to confirm what Cole already knew. There was no description, there was no report. There was a black man in a sweater with headphones on, and an officer who had decided that required investigating. Cole set his headphones around his neck. When he spoke next, his voice was level, the measured, unhurried calm of someone operating from complete certainty about what was happening and exactly how it was going to end. "Before I show you anything, I want you to tell me what I was doing that prompted this contact, specifically." Tasker stepped closer. "Sir, this isn't optional. You need to come with me or I'm going to have to— I'm not going anywhere with you." "Sir," Cole reached into the inside pocket of his sweater, slowly, deliberately. He had done this before. The careful, visible, unhurried movement of a man who understood that how you reach for a credential in front of a tense officer matters as much as what you produce. The credential case came out. He held it open, badge facing the body cam, federal seal unmistakable, his photo identification clear beside it. Marcus Cole, Special Agent, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Chicago Field Office. He let that sit for 2 full seconds. "Now, do you know me?" The gate area had gone quiet around them. Travelers in the surrounding seats had looked up from their phones. Other phones had risen to record. The body cam kept running. Tasker's mouth opened, closed. The footage would later show, frame by frame, in the internal review, in the civil rights complaint, in the settlement documentation, the precise moment his expression shifted from authority to understanding to the particular look of a man realizing the full dimensions of what he has done. "Agent Cole, I was responding to a—" There was no report. Cole's voice remained perfectly level. If there had been a report, you would have told me what it said when I asked you. You approached me because I was a black man sitting alone and you decided that was worth investigating. His credential case was still open, still facing the body cam. Your body cam has been running since before you walked over here. That footage is now evidence in whatever comes next. He pulled out his personal phone, dialed. This is Special Agent Cole, FBI Chicago Field Office. I'm at O'Hare, Terminal B, Gate 14. I've been subjected to a racially motivated detention attempt by an aviation security officer with no lawful basis for the contact. I need a supervisor on location immediately, and I need the body cam footage preserved before end of shift. He paused. Officer Tasker, badge number 7741. Yes, I'll hold. Tasker stood at the edge of the row, his hands at his sides, the gate area watching, his body cam still running, still capturing, still building the evidentiary record that would end his career and cost the city $6 million. Sergeant Linda Price arrived at Gate B14 7 minutes later. Her expression showed the specific quality of someone absorbing a situation worse than any version they had prepared for on the walk over. Agent Cole, Not yet, Sergeant. Cole held up one hand without looking away from his phone call. He finished the call, documented the incident number, confirmed the footage preservation request. Then he looked at Price directly. I want his body cam secured before he returns to his vehicle. I want a written incident report filed before end of shift, and I want the documented prior concerns in his personnel file because I am certain they exist, pulled and included in the internal review, not as a footnote, as the centerpiece. His voice was steady throughout. The airport ran its ordinary business around him. His flight was still 30 minutes from boarding. Price turned to Tasker. Badge and cam, you're on administrative leave pending review. Tasker surrendered them, the items that had represented 9 months of employment, in a gate area at O'Hare while dozens of travelers watched and at least 11 of them recorded. Cole picked up his headphones, placed them around his neck, settled back into his seat. His flight boarded on time. The internal investigation moved with the urgency that activates when the subject of a department's misconduct is a 12-year federal agent and the department's own body cam has documented everything without ambiguity or gap. There was nothing to interpret. The footage showed the approach with no dispatch, no stated cause, no observable behavior. Only a man in a gate area who had been selected and approached on the basis of what he looked like. Tasker's personnel file delivered what Cole had predicted. Sergeant Price's 2 documented concerns, the inconsistent judgment, the disproportionate scrutiny toward minority travelers. Both filed, neither acted upon. He had been running the B-Con course for 7 months with bias indicators in his record and no one had intervened. The contact data confirmed the pattern at scale. During his 9 months on the force, Tasker had initiated 38 unprompted passenger contacts. 29 of them, 76%, had involved black or brown travelers. His colleagues in the same concourse averaged 31% minority contacts in the identical period. The disparity was not a rounding error. It was a documented, consistent, statistically significant pattern that had been generating data for 9 months in a system with the tools to detect it. No one had run the numbers. The civil rights referral went to the Department of Justice within 72 hours. The FAA opened a concurrent compliance review. The City of Chicago's Office of Inspector General requested the full personnel file, the contact data, and all body cam footage from Tasker's 9-month tenure. Marcus Cole filed his federal civil rights lawsuit 11 days after the incident. The complaint was 43 pages. It documented the stop, the prior concerns, the contact data, the failure to act, and the specific, quantifiable harm of a federal agent being publicly subjected to a racially motivated detention attempt in a crowded terminal. Cole's attorney had won her last 4 civil rights cases at trial. The city's attorneys reviewed the complaint, the body cam footage, the 43 pages, and the personnel file and advised settlement. $6 million reached before the case saw a courtroom. Officer Brian Tasker was terminated and permanently barred from employment in any federally regulated security role. Sergeant Price received a formal reprimand and was removed from supervisory duties. The officers who had reviewed and signed off on her documentation without action received written censures and mandatory retraining. The system that had generated 2 concern notices and done nothing was dismantled and rebuilt. The reform program that followed was the most comprehensive in Chicago Department of Aviation Security history. A new bias monitoring system was implemented. Passenger contact data analyzed monthly. Statistical anomalies flagged for mandatory supervisory review before patterns became entrenched. Personnel concern protocols were revised. Documented bias indicators would now trigger mandatory intervention within 30 days. Annual bias-free conduct training was made compulsory for all security staff, with the O'Hare footage, the approach across the gate area, the 4-second silence after the badge, the 4 words at the center of the curriculum. The footage traveled beyond O'Hare. Aviation security agencies in 14 states requested it as training material. It was entered into the record at a Senate Commerce Committee hearing on airport security standards. A Northwestern Law School professor assigned it in her civil rights course. 4 words, "Do you know me?" became the shorthand in policy and academic circles for the institutional blindness that produces a 9-month officer walking past 20 travelers to stand over the one black man doing nothing.
Cole's wife, Renata, heard about the incident before his plane landed at Dulles. His field office colleague had texted her. She called the moment he was off the jetway. He answered, walking through the terminal. "Are you okay?" He considered it. "I'm fine, just tired of having to be prepared for it." That evening, his teenage daughter found the footage at dinner, brought her phone to the table. "Dad, this is everywhere." She watched his face while he watched the screen. "Why do you look so calm in that video?" He set the phone down. Because calm was the only thing that was going to help. Anger in that moment doesn't protect you. Staying still, staying clear, making sure everything is documented, that's what protects you. He looked at her, and then making sure what happened costs enough that they fix the thing that allowed it. "What did you do after?" "What I always do. Stayed calm, documented everything, filed the complaint, made sure the footage didn't disappear, made sure the settlement was large enough to mean something beyond my case." Cole testified before the Chicago City Council's Committee on Public Safety 40 days after the incident. He came in a suit, not as a performance of authority, but because 12 years had taught him that rooms like this respond to what they can see, and what he needed them to see was a man who had been treated as a suspect in a public space and had done every single thing correctly in response. "I had a badge," he told the committee. "I had credentials. I had 12 years of federal service and 2 commendations and a carry-on bag that had cleared TSA 45 minutes before Officer Tasker decided I needed to be explained. None of that should have been required to justify my presence in a gate area. A seat in a public terminal is not a privilege requiring demonstration." He looked along the council table. "The problem is not that he didn't recognize me. The problem is that the system documented his pattern twice and did nothing. The $6 million needs to mean that you fix the system. Don't let it mean anything less." His recommendations, the bias monitoring protocols, the mandatory intervention timelines, the contact data transparency requirements, were adopted into the Department of Aviation's operating policy within 60 days of his testimony. Terminal B, gates 10 through 16, returned to its ordinary rhythm within days of the incident. Travelers boarding, security officers running their routes, the continuous, unremarkable motion of one of the busiest airports in the world doing what airports do. Cole still flies through O'Hare, same terminal, same gate area. He never rerouted. If I avoid it, I'm telling myself I don't belong there, he told a colleague. I belong there. Every person in that terminal belongs there. That's what we're establishing. Renata framed the settlement letter, not the dollar amount, the paragraph, the one in which the city of Chicago formally acknowledged the unlawful nature of the contact, the documented pattern of bias, and the failure of supervisory intervention. She had one sentence underlined in red. It hung in his home office above his desk. He reads it before every trip, puts his badge in his inside pocket, checks his credentials, boards his flight. I knew there was a bias problem in airport security, he told Renata one evening. I had seen the data, read the reports, had colleagues who had gone through versions of this. But knowing it from a file is different from sitting in a gate chair with your headphones on and watching someone cross an entire terminal and choose you out of 60 other people. He was quiet for a moment. I was lucky. I had the badge in my pocket. Most people in that gate area didn't. The only difference between my story and theirs is what I had in my inside pocket. That's why you filed. That's why I filed. That's why I testified. That's why I still fly through Terminal B. The case file remains in federal records, Civil Action Number 2025 CV 00892. Subject: unlawful detention, racially selective enforcement, Fourth Amendment violation, deliberate indifference to documented bias. Location: O'Hare International Airport, Terminal B, Gate 14, Chicago, Illinois. Outcome: termination, federal civil rights settlement of $6 million, comprehensive departmental reform, 14-state training adoption. Principle established: a federal badge does not protect you from the institution that issues it, but it gives you standing, legal, documented, irrefutable, to demand that the institution answer for what it allowed. Special Agent Marcus Cole proved that principle by staying perfectly still while someone made a $6 million mistake, by reaching slowly into his inside pocket, and by asking 4 words that a Bodycam caught in full and a city paid dearly to stop having to answer. 2 years later, he remains with the Bureau. Terminal B remains in service. The gate area where it happened looks exactly as it did on a Tuesday afternoon in January. Fluorescent light, departure boards, travelers in rows of plastic chairs doing exactly what travelers do. Some accountability begins with lawsuits. Some begins with policy. Some begins with a black man in a navy sweater at an airport gate, headphones on, doing absolutely nothing, and an officer who looked at that and decided it needed explaining. The badge is visible now, the policy is different now, and the settlement letter framed above his desk reminds him every single morning why the work is nowhere near finished. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.